Hello, hello, hello. Hello. Sorry for that strange accent there. Getting kooky on me, I guess. Okay, hi. This is Amy from Rain Studios. And today I'm going to do a Japanese 12 and 2 weave, variations on Japanese 12 and 2 weave. This is a variation, it's called Stepping Stone, and I named this particular bracelet Shenandoah because I used to live in Virginia, and the Shenandoah River has these, the Shenandoah River has these bends. It's called the 7 Bends of Shenandoah. Anyway, and I quite liked that as kind of an homage to the beautiful Shenandoah River. I've seen it from up on top of the mountains, and it's really pretty. Anyway, so I first designed this one. This is based on Stepping Stones, which is a weave that was created by Corvus Chainmaille. And then as a companion piece, I designed this one, which is basically the same thing, only it comes around a little more and it goes up around a smaller ring. So this can be made either into a pendant, and you know, this little ring here, the chain can just go right through there, or you can make 2 of them and make them into earrings. And I have kits for both of those. Another variation on the same sort of, it doesn't look like it's at all related, but it really is. It uses the same sort of size rings, and it uses the same construction. These little rings here connected to these rings that are doubled, connected to these big fat rings, which is the same ring sizes are used for both. I just like the ring diameters are varied. All right, so since they're so related, I'm going to do them all in the same sort of vein. And I'm going to start with this one. Oh, I forgot to say what I call this one. I call this bracelet Enso, E-N-S-O, which is a Japanese word. It stands for circle. You know what? I'm going to get it all wrong. So Enso, that's what I call it. It's like a peace Zen thing. Okay, so to do Enso, I'm going to start with Enso. I use, for these big rings, I use a 14 gauge 6 millimeter inner diameter, and this big ring is a 14 gauge 8 millimeter inner diameter. The next size down is these guys here, which is 18 gauge 4.0 inner diameter, and you can see they're doubled. And then the guys that were connected, all of them all together, this is a 20 gauge ring, 2.75. This little guy here, and as you can also see, they are also doubled. All right, and so basically those are the ring sizes I use whenever I want to connect cool things in different ways, I guess you would say. Okay, so I got a whole pile of 20 gauge rings here, and I've already closed them. I really hate closing jump rings, so I usually will sit and just work for a half hour and close a whole bunch of them at once. And then I'll work on the piece until I run out, and then I'll spend another half hour and close a whole bunch again. Usually I don't last a half hour because I hate doing it. I will go as long as I can stand. All right, so I've got my small 14 gauge ring here, and I'm going to scoop 4 of my closed 20 gauge rings on. 4, like so. And I'm going to close that up. I have a new camera. I hope this helps with my whole focusing issue. All right, so they're closed. And now I'm going to take my 18 gauge ring. So if we use this as a reference, so I just did this one, and now I'm going to put that one on there. So I open up this 18 gauge ring, and I'm going to scoop on 4 of my small little itty bitty 20 gauge rings. I'm going to go through only 2 of the rings on there. It can be a little tight squeeze, but it's doable. There we go. See? 2 of them. And then I'm going to close that up. Okay. Now I need to double this 18 gauge ring. So I'm going to take another 18 gauge ring, open it up, I don't want to open it up too much. It doesn't matter so much at this point, but when I get the other ones on, I really don't want that open too much. So I scooped it through all of those 4 rings, and now I'm going to fold it over and go through those 2 rings too. Just like so. And close. Okay, so now my 18 gauge ring is doubled. It went through 2 of the rings on my big ring, and it's got 4 closed itty bitty rings right on there. Now, so if we look at this, I've got that one done. These are going to go up here, and I need to add my next set of 18 gauge rings. So on this ring, instead of adding 4 on there, they're going to go through this one. So I just need these 2 rings that are going to dangle off. So I just add 2 rings to this one. And now it gets a little tricky. So again, so here's my finger, big ring, 18 gauge ring. I just want to go through 2 of these rings, like so, like that. And then I'm going to bring it up here and go through these 2 that are on the big ring. It takes a little finagling, which is harder when you're trying to stay on camera. But we can do it. Okay, it went through. Yay! So, looks good. Now I close. Very good. Okay, I gotta move this out of the way. It's probably screwing up the focus. Okay, so now I got those 2 18 gauge rings doubled. I only have a single one of this guy here. I need to double him or her. Equal opportunity for jump rings. Okay, open, and I'm not gonna open this one very far because if it's open big, it's gonna be a pain in the tuchus to close. So again, I'm going to go through those 2 danglers, fold it kind of over, and work it through the rest of the rings. Got it through there, and now I gotta get it through there. Good job, Amy. Now see, if I had opened that way far up, this would be really hard. It would be hard to get it through, and it would be hard to close. Now this is why I like my bent nose pliers, because I can flip them around and just use those fine tips to get in there and close stuff up. Like so. Okay, I am well on my way. So that's the first section. Now I do the same thing over again. This time I'm going to use one of my 14 gauge 8mm rings. See, that one is 6mm and this one is 8mm. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to open it up and I'm going to scoop 4 closed rings on. Whoop. And sometimes when I'm easing this ring through here, instead of holding the ring like this with my pliers, I will hold it like this. And that will give me a nice little motion that I can use with my wrist. So this is a little tricky, this part. You got to kind of get it all set up in your fingers for success. I want to kind of push those rings out with my fingers so there's lots of space for this ring to go through. And I just wiggle until it pops through. That went easy. Now the next ones will be a pain in the butt because the first ones were so easy. All right, so again, I'm going to just try and push those through. See how much space I have showing there? Like if they were down like this, I wouldn't be able to get that ring through. So I want to push it through and I want to angle it. Oh, it went through beautifully. Trust me, sometimes it is not so easy. All right, so it went through all 4 rings. Definitely double check. Sometimes I'll do it and I'll see that I haven't caught all the rings, and like one of them will be caught inside or one will be dangling off the side. So make sure you went through all 4 of those and then close it up. Close. And that that's basically, you just repeat all of those steps again, alternating between the little 14 gauge ring and the big 14 gauge ring, and you just keep on going. And then when you have it the desired length, you just add a clasp and you're good to go. These make really neat little earrings too, like if it were just this long, like 3 links long, 1, 2, 3, then put a little ear wire up here for a matching earring set. Very nice. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do. I'm trying to make this snappy because I'm getting these other ones. I'm going to do the other ones also. So the next one I'm going to do is my Shenandoah pendant. So this one is the same as my Enso. The only difference is I do a whole lot more around these rings. Instead of just the 2, I do a whole bunch. And this has a big 14 gauge 10 millimeter ring down here, and then a little 14 gauge 6 millimeter ring down here. Same sizes around here, 18 gauge 4.0, and then these little guys here. These little guys here are 20 gauge 2.5, 20 gauge 7.5 millimeter ID, inner diameter. Okay, so let's get to it. I like to start with the big ring, and then I have to count to see how many rings we're going to pop on here. Let me get this out of the way. So if I look at this, I need to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rings closed already, and I need to add them on there. 8 times 2, because these are doubled, so 16 rings. I'm going to line them up so that I know I get them all. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. All right, and I'm going to keep those separate. So I got to get all those rings on that ring. Let's do it. I open it up, and on they all go. Scoop, scoop, scoop. 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 Stop saying scoop. Okay, 18 rings, or sorry, 16 rings. And they're all on there. Close it up. Make sure that's closed nice and tight. No gaps. I'm not convinced. I'm going again. That click is a good noise. It means it's super closed, super flush. Okay, I'm happy with that. Okay, so now I'm going to take my 18 gauge ring, and it's the same thing I did with the Enso. I need to scoop on, well, okay, almost the same thing. I need to scoop on 2 of my closed 20 gauge rings, and I'm going to go through 2 rings off of my big ring. Just like so, and close it up. I'm going to double this guy here, my 18 gauge ring. It's always good to double it as you go, because if you get done and then you see that you missed one, it can be really hard to try and double a ring that's already in a whole big thing. So I'm doubling this ring. I put it through those 2, and then I fold it over and put it through the other 2. Basically, it has to go through the same rings as that first ring. That is the definition of doubling. Okay, so that guy's there. Now I'm going to do it again. I take another 18 gauge ring. I'm going to scoop 2 little closed rings on. And I go through those 2 rings, and I go through, and this part's important, it's got to be 2 neighbors to these 2 rings. So I have to make sure these 2 rings, it's the neighbors. I can't like go through one up here, which I have done. You'd think it would be hard to do, but I've done it. Okay, so Now we're going to go through the rings that are dangling off of our 18 gauge rings, and then also through the 2 neighbor rings that are off of our big ring. It's tricky. I got one. It's tricky. There we go. Got 2. See how I got them all both? And I still have my little dangler guys. If it's too tricky, you do not have to put these guys on first. You could go through those 2 sets of rings, and then you could pop these guys on after, before you close. In fact, that's probably easier. I just like to make things harder for myself, apparently. So let's close it up. And now we got to double that ring. So another 18 gauge ring. Double, double, double. Let's go through those 2, and then I fold it over and go through here. This can be really hard. I'm not lying. You just got to kind of have to wiggle it through. Done. Flipping my pliers around and close it up. Nice and flush. Okay, so I'm going to take an editing break while I do some more of these guys going all the way around up to the top. Okay? Editing break. Okay, I am back from the editing break. Here's a little secret. The editing break was like a month long. I was all ready to finish the video, and then my family came home from wherever they were, and I had to stop, and now it's a month later, and we're gonna finish this baby. All right, so here I've got all these rings done all the way around. I used up all the rings that were on this big ring, as you can see. Now we're going to add this top ring and do our little swirly around there. So the first thing I need to do is I need to add 2 rings of our little bitty 20 gauge rings on top of these 2 18 gauge rings. So I'm going to pop those on real quick. And why am I doing this? Well, these are the ones that my smaller 14 gauge ring is going to connect through. Get these closed up. Try to stay on camera. So, once I get this last ring on here, I'll show you what I mean. Okay. So what I'm talking about is, if we look at this one, you can see we've got these guys here that's connected to the 14 gauge ring, and then we've got our 14 gauge ring, our 6mm 14 gauge ring up here. And what I did is I just added these 2 rings and these 2 rings to those 2 rings. So see, if we take a look, let me zoom in a little bit. That's out. So if we look here, here's the 2 rings I just added on top of that guy, and then there's those 2 rings there, and these 2 rings are going to connect to the next set of 18 gauge rings right there. Okay, so now we need to know how many. Here's my 16 gauge ring here. And I need to open this guy up, and I need to, just like we put rings, pre-closed rings onto this big ring, I need to slip some pre-closed rings onto this ring. So let me go ahead and count. And actually, it's a good time to say, when you buy this as a kit from me, it comes like this, Shenandoah pendant kit, and it has all of the rings separated out in their own little bags. I have a little thingy in there that tells you, if you need a tutorial, go and look here. So there's the 20 gauge rings that you'll need, the 18 gauge rings, 14 gauge, see it's just got the one guy in there, and the 10 millimeter 14 gauge ring. And then also what I include is, for this tutorial, I don't usually include this on other tutorials because it's pretty self-explanatory. It usually only has 1 or 2 sizes. But for this tutorial, I do include a diagram that tells you where to look. Let me zoom out. Where's my zoomer? So for this tutorial, I've been like looking at this and counting and referencing this piece. And obviously, if you buy a kit from me, you won't have this piece to reference. So I include this lovely little diagram that tells you exactly where each ring goes, and you'll be able to count, oh, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. I need to put 16 closed rings on there. So that you'll really have it and you'll know exactly where each ring goes. And it's nice and big compared to like this little itty bitty one. So, also, the copper version of this pendant. Ooh, I zoomed out so far you can see my messy bench. Let me fix that. The copper version of this pendant, I also include this diagram for the copper version, because copper, when I coil the wire onto a mandrel, the copper wire is softer than sterling silver, and so that means that the ring stays more true to the actual size of the mandrel. So for example, the 20 gauge 2.75, they're a lot closer to 20 gauge to 2.75 than say the sterling rings. The sterling ring, the wire is harder, so the wire springs back a little bit from the mandrel after I coil it. And so this ring is actually a little teeny bit bigger than this. So anyway, my point is, I have taken all that into account in the copper version. The 2.75 can be too tight when you're doing this in copper. So these rings here, and these rings here, and those rings there, and those rings there, I include a couple of 3.0 rings, because in those places it can just be a squidge too snug. So, and I also include the copper diagram so that you know what you are doing. Okay, sorry, got a little sidetracked, but I thought that was important to say it. Okay, so now I need to count up how many rings I'm gonna need to put on my little guy here. So these two are already there, 1 and 2. So 2, 4, 6. I only need to put 6 closed rings on this guy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. If it's too tricky to keep those rings on while you're finagling the ring through, then you can just put the ring through and then add them on after. This is the way I always do it, so that's the way I'm going to do it today. Okay, so now I got my rings on there, and again, I like to hold it like this. Let me zoom in. Okay, so I've got my ring here with my 6 closed rings, and I am going to go through those 2 guys there, these 2 dangly guys, and these 2 dangly guys, but not those dangly guys. Okay, sorry, here we go. So again, I'm gonna push those rings out as far as I can. Actually, I'm gonna start with these 2. Push them out like that until I can see lots of ring space through the hole, and then I just carefully work it. Okay, I got it through my first 2 rings. Can you see? I hope so. Right there. Now let's get it through the next 2. I'm pushing them out. I'm wiggling it through. I'm using my nail to kind of push that ring down over it. And there it goes. Okay. And now I'm going to close that baby up. Nope. There we go. All right, so now I have all those guys on, and now I'm going to do the exact same thing I did before. I'm going to turn this over because I just like to work at it from this angle. I'm going to take an 18 gauge ring, pop 2 closed 20 gauge rings on there, and Same thing. I'm working my way around that little bitty 14 gauge ring. I'm getting those on, and now I'm going to slip it through these two. 1 and 2. There we go. Close. Now you really got to be careful to get these guys closed really tight, because if there's a gap in that ring, then one of these little rings could slip through it. It's a good rule for all chainmail, actually. It really, I would not attempt this piece until you have worked on your closures and gotten them super tight and flush. Now I'm doubling this ring, like so. Boy, this video has shown me that I have a propensity to do weird voices when I'm talking to myself in the camera. And close. Okay, and that's well on its way, doing all the way around. And I'm going to stop that there because you just continue the same steps we did down here, all the way up around, and you will finish with a lovely pendant like that. What I did here is once I got up to the top and did those 2 rings, I just added one more 18 gauge ring through both of those, and that is the bail. A bail is a fancy word for where the chain goes through. That's the bail for the chain, the necklace chain. If you're doing earrings, you could pop an ear wire on there. I would put one more little ring, probably one of these little 20 gauge rings right on there, and then put my ear wire through that one because I like it to face forward. Anyway, that is it. This is also in a bracelet. It's the same steps, same thing again, and also if you buy the kit, you get a diagram for the bracelet as well. So I'm going to wrap that up. I hope you've enjoyed it. Go chainmail. Thank you for watching. This is Amy at Rain Studios. Happy chainmailing. Bye.